All right, hi. This is Katie Boone, and I'm interviewing my friend Dahlia Michaels. Dahlia is a friend I made on Trek this year, and one of our shared commonalities, or the things that we have in common, is that we both took gap years. And during my gap year, I stayed back in New Jersey, and I didn't really do much. I just worked. But Dahlia has a really interesting story. She went on a program. It was for Jewish kids, right?
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly, okay.
Mm-hmm.
She went on a program to Tel Aviv, and there she had some experiences, and I just wanted to ask her and bring her on here to talk about belonging and otherness and her thoughts. Okay. So to get into the questions, for the first one I have, for the past couple weeks in our class and in our readings, we've been focusing on the concept of belonging. Whether it's through a place, a person, a feeling, where do you think you find your sense of belonging, and how has it changed, if it has, since your time in Tel Aviv?
Recently, since my time at being a UVM, and from coming from a place where there was this looming threat, and being surrounded by people with many of the same ideals and beliefs, it's very different. The crowd at UVM and not having this looming threat of a war. So I recently went to a service hosted by Hillel on campus, and in the service I felt somewhat of a belonging, because as being a Jew and coming from Israel, and to be surrounded by Jews again, it was pretty nice. And even though it was a very different feeling than being back in Israel, it was still something to nice to feel familiar around.
Yeah, that's awesome. For our second question, how do you think we should go about promoting belonging and rejecting othering in our everyday life?
To me, I think holding people accountable is the first thing I want to premise. If you're around someone, a friend, or literally anybody, and if they say something that just doesn't sit right or is just morally wrong, I think you gotta say something. Especially if they talk about a subject they're not properly educated on, you should hold them accountable, tell them, and I think the first thing to do is see something, say something.
Yeah.
The people you surround yourself is really important, and you should always hold people accountable on the things they say, because if you start instilling that idea in them, I think that's the first step to kind of make a change.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for helping me out here. All right. Next up is my roommate, Mary. Mary and I are actually from the same town, but I took a gap year, so we grew up a grade apart. So I didn't really know about Mary until our mutual friends were like, hey, I know this girl that's also going to UVM, and she's super cool. And then I decided to reach out to you, and we became roommates.
Yes.
So I decided to talk to her about her opinions on othering and belonging. And so our the first question I'm going to ask you is, John Powell, one of the authors in Belonging Without Othering, defines othering as any practice that denies someone their full humanity and their right and their dignity based on the assumption that either we're better than certain people or that certain people are irrelevant. Is there any point in time that you felt othered, either in your childhood or here at college?
Yeah, I mean, when I think back to my childhood, I was definitely, especially going middle school and early high school, a quieter kid. So if I was put in group projects or in a situation where I'd have to work with or interact with people who were, I guess, considered popular or louder, sometimes I felt the condescension, you were kind of talked down on. If kind of looked as subhuman if you weren't if they didn't see you as an equal. So I think that's kind of like the biggest time I felt othered.
Yeah, I agree. Also, as a quiet kid in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of New Jersey, in Geoffrey Cohen's book on belonging, specifically in chapter 4, there's mention of New Jersey's anti-bullying legislation in New Jersey. Growing up in New Jersey, I feel like all the speakers we had, even throughout high school, all of them were like about like anti-bullying, and there was a lot of like posters and
there was a lot of posters. And I think I remember this guy coming in with a bike and doing BMX tricks to no bullying.
Yeah, and they connected that to anti-bullying.
yeah.
Somehow. But I don't really feel like any, like however much money they put into it, I don't think anyone was persuaded against it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wanted to hear your take on it.
I mean, I knew some kids who were like particularly cruel, especially in like the, I guess, 12 to 15-year-old age range. I knew like kids that would like some of the most brutal teasing and like bullying and online stuff a lot. Like a lot of kids were targeted through cyberbullying and like taken advantage of, and it was really sad to see and like witness, but it was definitely prevalent, and a lot of like the school, like even if you took it to them, did not do much.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like coming from the same school, it's really interesting because I think we keep going back and forth on like stories of bullying we've heard in our school, and like everything is new. Like you told me something today that was just kind of like shocking on like a cruel level. It was pretty brutal, but yeah, I mean, it's awful. All right, last question.
Okay.
How do you think we should go about promoting belonging and rejecting othering in our everyday life?
I think it's promoting like having an open mind when going into like social situations and talking to people, because I think a lot of the othering can be stopped by just like an understanding between like we're all people, like you shouldn't make anyone feel like small or like I guess outcasted for just being slightly different, which
I agree.
Yeah, I think is the source of it. But
yeah. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Boone,
for coming on my Nature and Belonging podcast.
Of course.
All right, and I think that's a wrap. That wraps it up.
God bless.
Thank you.